Hi everyone, I'm Sal, co-creator of Salt and Pepper Productions, and I'm back with another Angels of Death video. Today I'm going to dissect and analyze the anime's opening credits sequence. During my first and second viewing of the show, I loved how the opening was filled with references and hints of foreshadowing. So I thought it'd be fun to go through the opening and point out some of these little details. I also decided to do a little bit of research to see if I could find any hidden symbolism, and some of the stuff I learned through my research is pretty interesting. I'll leave links to my sources in the description in case you want to check them out yourself. Now, I'll be referencing plot points from the show throughout this video, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I suggest you click off now. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. The opening sequence starts with a shot of the blue moon, and then the camera pans down towards a city, presumably the same city Zack terrorized before becoming a resident. We then cut to a wide shot, and then a close-up of a poster that says, "Wanted, Isaac Foster." The image used for the Wanted poster is based on Zack's original character design. The image was pulled directly from the game. I personally watched the anime before watching a walkthrough of the game, but I'm sure that was a fun Easter egg for those who played the game first. Next, we get a shot of a graveyard. I don't think this is meant to be Eddie's floor because, 1, this cemetery is clearly outside, and 2, Eddie's floor doesn't have gravestones that look like these. They're not crosses, and they don't have little crosses on them. We never see an area like this in the actual show, so I'm wondering if it's meant to be a nod to this piece of art from the game. Next, we get a shot of pink roses with long, thorny stems. 3 roses are in the top right corner, and 1 is in the bottom left corner. These 3 are in full bloom, but this one appears to be wilting, and it has a blood stain on its petals. There are also 4 windows in the background. While researching rose and thorn symbolism, I discovered the Dictionary of Symbolism on the University of Michigan's Fantasy and Science Fiction website. Here's what the site had to say about thorns. Denoting sin, sorrow, and hardship, the thorn is one of the most ancient symbols in the world. Together with the rose, it represents pain and pleasure. This was very interesting to me because the residents of the building, the Angels of Death, are in charge of passing judgment on test subjects. Their job is to attack, test, torture, and/or kill the sinners who come to their floors. Perhaps the thorny stems are meant to represent the sins of those who came to the building, as well as the pain they endured at the hands of the residents. Perhaps the 3 fully bloomed roses are meant to represent Danny, Eddie, and Kathy, and the wilting, blood-stained rose is meant to represent Zack, who broke the rules and, as a result, lost his position as a judge or an angel of death. Next, we see the shadow of a hanging body swaying back and forth. This is clearly meant to be a nod to Danny's backstory and his mother's suicide. We're looking at the shadow from outside a window, and there is ivy on the walls surrounding the window. In the actual show, we see ivy like this in one of the rooms on Rachel's floor. According to the Symbolism Wiki, ivy can represent attachment and obsession. The ivy in this shot most likely symbolizes Danny's attachment to Rachel, who resembles Danny's mother. There's an object on the floor near the hanging body, but you can't really tell what it is because the text is in the way and they cut to a different shot as the text fades away. The object appears to be made of metal, and it looks like it has a handle, so it could be a cup. Next, we see a window with white transparent curtains. There is blood on the windowsill and on the wall beneath the windowsill. We see a similar window in the show's final episode, when Zach breaks into Rachel's bedroom at the institution, kills her, and leaves his knife behind. Next, we see Rachel sitting alone in that one room on floor B7, the room with the fake blue moon. There's a stuffed animal on the floor, a rabbit or a bunny, and it's in pretty bad condition. Its stuffing is on the floor, its body parts are falling off. You can see that someone, presumably Rachel, tried to sew it back together. This is likely a nod to Rachel's sewing ritual. We know that Rachel has a lot of toys on her floor, but I don't think we ever see this particular toy in the actual show. We do see a stuffed rabbit toy on her floor, and we do see a rabbit on floor B2. According to the Dictionary of Symbolism, rabbits are associated with lunar figures like the moon. I found that tidbit of information interesting since the moon is very significant to the story and its characters. According to whatismyspiritanimal.com, rabbits can also represent a prayerful lifestyle because whenever they put their paws up to wash their faces, it looks like they're praying. This is interesting because Rachel folds her hands as if in prayer several times throughout the show. According to the Spirit Animal website, rabbits can symbolize cleverness, creativity, and problem solving, which fits Rachel's character. So maybe this rabbit is meant to represent Rachel herself. Next we see Zach and Rachel on Zach's floor. They exchange looks with each other, the color scheme changes, and then we cut to the two of them standing in an elevator. Next we see Danny standing beside a tank in one of the rooms on his floor. Danny moves closer to the tank obscures the right side of his face, and the red and green eyeballs appear. As that happens, the color scheme changes, and if you look closely, you can see blood spatter on the walls in the background. This is presumably from when Zach attacked Danny in the first episode and got blood everywhere. Next, we get a few shots of Eddie's floor. We see the gravestone Eddie made for Rachel, and we see him peek out from inside the coffin sitting beside it, which is fitting because he dies inside a coffin meant for Rachel in the actual show. I think it's worth noting that there are pink roses everywhere in these two shots. Next, we get a shot of Kathy with her zombie-like prisoners. They are all surrounded by pink roses. Before doing my symbolism research, I was confused that there were roses in this shot because there weren't any flowers on Kathy's floor. Now that I've done my research, I think it's very fitting that Kathy is surrounded by roses. Kathy seems to be very committed to her role as an angel of death. As I said before, all the residents are in charge of judging the test subjects, but Kathy's the only one who refers to herself as a judge. She has a lot of energy and enthusiasm. The tests and punishments on her floor are much more extravagant than anything we see on the other floors. The elaborate setup is her way of saying, "This is the role I was given, so I'm going to go all out with it." She also loves watching people suffer. She loves torturing them physically and emotionally. The words sorrow, hardship, pain, and pleasure describe Kathy and her floor perfectly. Next, we get a shot of the residents standing in floor B2's cathedral with Father Gray in the background. After that, we get another shot of the moon, which, interestingly, appears to be yellow instead of blue. Then the camera pans down to reveal Rachel running through a cemetery. Again, this clearly isn't Eddie's floor, but I'm not sure if it's meant to be the same cemetery from earlier. There are no leaves on the trees, there is no grass on the ground, and this cemetery appears to have more cross gravestones than the other one. I will say the contrast between Graveyard A and Graveyard B reminds me of when Rachel returned to Eddie's floor with Father Gray and all the plants were dried up. Next, we see Rachel reach up and we see Zach's bandaged hand grab her by the wrist. As that happens, we see young Zach in the background. He's standing out in the rain with trash bags filled with dead bodies, which his caretakers forced him to bury in the actual show. The image of young Zach is tainted with a red color scheme. As Rachel and Zach's arms pull away, we get a close-up of young Zach's profile, and then the scene transitions to Rachel, who's standing in a large purple room, presumably on floor B2. The camera pans around her, and we see that she's surrounded by mirrors. 4 of those mirrors look identical. The 5th mirror, the one floating directly in front of her, resembles the one she came across in the actual show. I'm noticing a pattern. Earlier on, we saw 4 pink roses and 4 windows. Now we're seeing 4 identical mirrors. I already proposed that the 4 roses represent Zach, Danny, Eddie, and Kathy. Perhaps the 4 windows and the 4 identical mirrors represent them as well. Perhaps the 5th mirror represents Rachel, the 5th and final angel of death. Moving on, there are little clouds of smoke in the air and there are red curtains, similar to the ones we see during the witch trial. We get a close-up of Rachel, who's looking at the mirror in front of her, and then we cut to Rachel's eye. We briefly see a reflection of the mirror in Rachel's eye, followed by a snake. We see snakes a couple times in the actual show. There was a portrait of a snake on floor B2, and Rachel and Zach were attacked by a snake. The snake could be a reference to the serpent from the story of Adam and Eve. It could be there to represent evil. It's also worth noting that the words snake and serpent are sometimes used to describe people who are sneaks or liars, the one thing Zach hates more than anything in the world. Next we see a sheet of glass crack and shatter into pieces. We see an image of Father Gray in one of the glass shards. He's standing in front of a stained glass window, and his back is facing the viewer. After the glass shard spins a few times, Father Gray turns, and we get a close-up of his profile. We see a lot of broken glass in the show. I can think of 3 notable scenes featuring broken glass. The first scene was during Rachel's exploration of floor B2 in episode 7. While searching for medicine, she finds a mirror, the one I talked about earlier. Red text appears on the mirror, and right before the glass shatters, the words, "To leave, collect your own pieces, and know the true yourself," appear. Rachel then uses a glass shard to cut through some portraits. The second scene was near the end of episode 13. Zach had just learned the truth about Rachel and told her that he wasn't her god. In response, Rachel shoots a bullet through a window and sends glass flying. The third scene was during the final episode, shortly after Zach escaped with Rachel, shortly before Danny dies. A window breaks and glass shards begin to fall towards Danny. I did some research on broken glass symbolism, and according to one blog I found, broken glass can represent shattered dreams and expectations. So the use of broken glass in these 2 scenes is very fitting. Next, we see Zach attacking a shadowy figure in a hallway. Judging from the lighting and the metal walls, I'd say this is meant to be Kathy's floor. There's this red light emanating from Zach's eyes as he attacks the figure, and he has this huge smile on his face. We see this red in his eyes a few times in the actual show. It's meant to signify his excitement to kill. The next shot shows Rachel wearing a white, blood-stained gown. Her eyes are closed as if she's asleep, and she's holding Zach's knife over her heart as white feathers fall around her. The background is blue and white, like the moon. In the actual show, Rachel wears a white gown during her time at the mental institution. She wore this gown the night Zach broke into her bedroom and killed her, hence the bloodstains. At the end of the show, Zach gives Rachel his knife for protection. After Danny shoots Rachel, she tells Zach that she'll hold on to their promise, which she does. She holds on to their promise and the knife until the night she dies. Hence why she's holding the knife over her heart in this shot. We see birds and feathers a few times in the actual show. According to whatsyoursign.com and nataliacuna.com, feathers and birds are often perceived as messages from God and the angels in heaven. Feathers can also be perceived as messages from deceased loved ones. That is actually very fitting because after we see Rachel surrounded by feathers in the opening, we see Zach on floor B2 catching a single feather, which then stains his bandaged palm with blood. Perhaps that feather was a message from the now deceased Rachel. Next, we get a close-up of Rachel's dark, lifeless eye. We then see Rachel slowly raise Zach's knife up and point the blade's tip towards the viewer. She has a blank expression on her face. This next set of shots goes by quickly. We get a shot of Danny's floor, a shot of Eddie's floor, and a shot of the elevator on, I'm guessing, Kathy's floor based on the lighting, the floor, and the wall. The elevator opens. It's pitch black inside, but then we see a bright light. The light expands until it takes up nearly the entire screen. This could be referencing the expression, light at the end of the tunnel. Or it could be referencing the idea that people see a bright light when they die. The next few shots have a blue color scheme, and they also go by quickly. We get a silhouette of Zach's profile with the character for killing. We get a shot of Danny. We get a silhouette of Rachel's head with the character for sword. Together, those two characters form the word slaughter. We get a shot of Eddie. We get a wide shot of Zach and Rachel's silhouettes. The character for of is in the space between them. We get a shot of Kathy. We get a shot of Rachel with the character for heaven. The character disappears and then the camera zooms out a bit. We get a shot of Zach with the character for messenger. Together those two characters form the word angel. We cut to another shot of Zach, similar to the previous shot except the camera is further back and he sighs. There's another bright flash of light, almost like the flash from a camera, and then we see Zach and Rachel standing in front of the height wall from Kathy's floor. They're holding up the name boards they used when they got their pictures taken. We get a shot of the show's title in Japanese and English, and that's the end. This opening plays at the beginning of episodes 2 and 3. But starting with episode 4, the ending is slightly altered. Following the shot of Zach and Rachel holding up their names, we get the show's title. But then we get some static. As this clip goes by, you may notice what appears to be a pair of eyes, possibly Rachel's eyes, in the static. And if you pause at just the right moment, at just the right frame, you can see what looks like blood spatter on top of a black and white background. The background resembles Kathy's height wall, and the blood spatter is shaped like a pair of eyebrows, or wings. Thank you for watching the video. So, what did you think of my analysis? Is there anything you wish I spent more time on? Did I miss anything? Also, what's your favorite shot or piece of symbolism from the opening sequence? Personally, I really like the shots with the rose, thorn, and feather symbolism. Don't be afraid to like and subscribe. Check out our other videos if you haven't already. Be sure to share this video, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye!